The 4 children arrived on a Wednesday in early June, a week before their parents were scheduled to pick them up from the Stillwater Youth Conservation Camp. That detail matters because of what happened Thursday night, and because everything I did after that, every decision I made, hinged on the question of whether I was protecting 6 kids or 5. My name is Dana Rowell. I've been a seasonal ranger with the Montana Department of Natural Resources for 11 years, posted to the Garnet Range District since 2019. My primary duties are trail maintenance, campsite inspection, and wildlife monitoring in a 70-square-mile block of mixed conifer forest between the Clark Fork and Blackfoot drainages. Elevation runs from about 4,000 feet at the trailheads to just under 7,000 at Cold Heart Peak. I know most of the terrain by smell the difference between North Slope fir and South Slope pine, the sulfur pockets near the old mining adits, the particular wet granite scent the creeks throw off in early summer when snowmelt is still running hard. The rules exist because of the children, not because of what's in the forest that came later, or maybe it was always there and the rules simply accounted for it the way a levee accounts for a river. The Stillwater program has operated for 19 years, bringing groups of 10 to 14 kids aged 12 through 16 into the backcountry for week-long conservation education rotations. The kids clear trail, learn compass navigation, plant seedlings. It's good work. The program director is Darren Voss, a retired high school biology teacher from Helena. The counselors rotate seasonally. I interface with the groups when they pass through my section, mostly to ensure compliance with bear protocols and fire restrictions. There are 9 rules for nighttime operations within the Garnet Range District. They're printed on green cardstock, laminated, and posted in every shelter and at every established campsite. I've read them so many times I can recite them from memory, the way you memorize a prayer without believing it until the day you need it. Rule 1. No person under 18 may be outside a shelter structure between full dark and first light without adult escort. Rule 2. All headlamps and flashlights must use red filter mode after 10 p.m. Rule 3. No audio playback devices of any kind after 9 p.m. No music, no recorded nature sounds, no white noise machines. Rule 4. If you hear your name called from outside the shelter after dark, do not respond verbally. Wake the nearest adult by touch only. Rule 5. Count all members of your group before entering the shelter for the night. Count again at first light. Report any discrepancy to district dispatch immediately, even if the count corrects itself. Rule 6. Do not follow any light source you cannot identify. If you observe a moving light in the forest that does not correspond to another group's registered position, close your eyes and navigate by touch back to the nearest shelter. Rule 7. Between midnight and 4 a.m., the forest is closed. This means no one exits the shelter for any reason, including medical emergency. Treat in place, evacuate at first light. Rule 8. If a child reports seeing another child outside the shelter at night, that report is to be treated as a wildlife sighting. Log it. Do not search. Rule 9. These rules are not negotiable, not contextual, and not subject to ranger discretion. Violations result in immediate program suspension and mandatory incident review. That last one is the one that kept me awake for 3 years. Not because I violated it, but because I spent a night understanding exactly why it was written that way, why the word discretion was specifically excluded, and what happens when a situation arises that demands exactly the kind of judgment the rules forbid. The Wednesday group was small. 4 kids, 2 boys, 2 girls, all 14 plus counselor Aaron Marsh, 26, third rotation. I met them at the Copper Creek Junction around 2 p.m. to check their bear canister seals and confirm their campsite reservation. Aaron was competent, calm. He'd done the training, passed the night protocols exam. The kids were typical, 2 chatty, 1 quiet, 1 clearly annoyed at being there. Standard summer dynamic. They were headed for Site 11C, about 4 miles further in, a flat bench above the creek with 3 platform shelters. Good sight, clear sight lines. I'd inspected it 10 days prior and noted nothing unusual, no fresh bear sign, no damage, adequate firewood supply. I gave Aaron the standard briefing. He confirmed he had the laminated rules. I watched them walk up the trail until they disappeared around the switchback, and then I went back to my station cabin to finish a culvert inspection report. That night, around 11:30, I was in bed reading when my radio crackled. Not a transmission, just the sound it makes when someone on the same frequency keys their mic without speaking. A quick blip of static, and then nothing. I waited. It didn't repeat. I logged it as atmospheric interference, which is common in the mountains when temperature inversions form. Thursday morning was overcast. Low clouds sitting on the ridge like a cap. I ran my usual patrol loop, 8 miles, checking trail conditions and 2 seasonal water crossings. Around 10 a.m., I passed within half a mile of 11C and heard the kids working on trail clearing. Normal sounds. Shovels on gravel. Someone laughing. I didn't stop in because there was no operational reason to. At 3:47 p.m., Aaron radioed District Dispatch. I heard the transmission because we share the same repeater. Dispatch, this is Stillwater Group 4 at Site 11 Charlie. I have a count discrepancy I need to report. Go ahead, Group 4. I counted 4 campers at lunch. I'm now counting 5. Silence on the channel for about 4 seconds. Group 4, confirm. You are reporting 5 miners at your location. Your manifest lists 4. Confirmed. I have 5. I verified against the manifest 3 times. I have an extra. Stand by, Group 4. I put down my sandwich and walked to the radio. Dispatch came back 90 seconds later. Group 4, per protocol, maintain visual on all 5. Do not separate any individual from the group. Do not attempt to determine which is unmanifested. Ranger Rowell, are you monitoring? I keyed my mic. Rowell here, monitoring. Proceed to 11 Charlie for direct assessment. ETA? About 45 minutes on foot. Copy. Group 4, Ranger Rowell en route. Maintain standard protocols. Do not discuss the discrepancy with miners. Understood. Marsh out. I packed my day kit and started walking. The trail to 11C climbs about 600 feet through old-growth Douglas fir before leveling onto the bench. The cloud ceiling was dropping. By the time I reached the site, visibility was maybe 200 yards, and the air had that silver-gray quality that makes everything look like a photograph taken slightly out of focus. Aaron met me at the trail junction before the site. He looked composed, but his hands were busy adjusting his cap, touching his radio, pulling at the strap of his pack. The gestures of someone managing adrenaline through minor physical tasks. "Show me," I said. He walked me to the main clearing. 5 kids were sitting around the fire ring, working on a journaling exercise. 2 boys, 3 girls. 1 more girl than should have been there. "When did you first notice?" I asked. "After lunch. I did the count before the afternoon session and came up with 5. I thought I'd miscounted, so I did it again. 5. Then I pulled the manifest and physically matched names to faces. Every kid on the manifest is accounted for, but there are 5 bodies. Which one isn't on the list?" Aaron's face did something complicated. "That's the thing. I can't tell. Every time I try to identify which one is extra, all 5 of them check out. They all answer to their names. They all have the right gear, the right journals, the right histories. I've talked to each of them individually. They all have memories of the trip so far that are accurate." I looked at the group. They were writing in their notebooks, occasionally murmuring to each other. 5 perfectly normal 14-year-olds. 2 boys, Marcus and David. 3 girls, Haley, Sonia, and Kira. Except only 2 girls had registered. Haley and Sonia. Kira was not on any manifest I had access to. "The 3rd girl," I said. "Kira." "I thought so too at first, But then I asked Marcus a question about yesterday's navigation exercise, and he described it with 5 people. All the kids remember 5 members. They all know Kira. They talk about her like she's been here since Wednesday. She wasn't at the check-in. I counted 4 kids at Copper Creek Junction yesterday. I know. I remember 4 too, but my own notes from last night, my log, I wrote 5 names at evening count. I asked him to show me. He pulled out his field notebook. There it was in his handwriting. 2100. Head count confirmed. 5 campers present. All accounted for. And below that, 5 names listed, including Kira Wayland. I didn't write that, Aaron said. I don't remember writing it, but it's my handwriting. I radioed dispatch and reported what I'd found. The response came from District Supervisor Cal Trujillo, which meant this had already been escalated above normal operations. Raul, this is Trujillo. You are to remain at 1-1 Charlie through the night. Standard night protocol applies with the following addition. You are not to attempt to separate, isolate, or identify the unmanifested individual. You are not to inform any minor of the discrepancy. You are to treat all 5 as legitimate program participants. Do you understand? Cal, there's a child here who... Dana. The rule exists for a reason. Do not attempt to determine which one. Count, observe, and maintain. I'm sending a support team at first light. Understood. Aaron and I spent the remaining daylight hours going through motions. We ran the evening session compass work, tree identification. 5 kids participated. Kira was quiet but present. Dark hair, average height, wearing the same green Stillwater program t-shirt as the others. She had a journal with her name on it. She had a sleeping bag in the girls' shelter. She had a toothbrush in the bear bag. She existed completely in every physical and social sense, except in the registration system and in my memory of the previous afternoon. At 8:30 p.m., I did the pre-shelter count. 5 kids, all names answered. I watched their faces as they called out. Every one of them was a 14-year-old child. Nothing wrong with any of them. No strangeness in their eyes, no hesitation in their speech, no uncanny quality I could point to and say that one. If anything, the eerie part was how completely normal it all seemed, how my brain was already adjusting, already filing Kira into the category of accounted for and moving on. Aaron and I would alternate watch through the night from the counselor shelter, which had a clear line of sight to both the girls' and boys' platforms. I took first shift. The kids went to bed at 9. I sat on the porch of the counselor shelter with my red filtered headlamp and my notebook. The forest got dark in stages. First the understory disappeared, then the canopy blurred into the sky, then everything beyond 10 feet was just sound and smell. The creek, fir resin, cold air rolling down from the peaks. At 10:20, I heard movement in the girls' shelter. Shifting. A whispered conversation I couldn't make out. Then silence. At 11:08, my radio blipped again, that same keyless static I'd heard the night before. 1 pulse. No voice. I noted it. At 11:41, I heard footsteps on the trail below the campsite. Measured, even steps. Not animal. The wrong rhythm for deer. Too steady for anything on 4 legs. They approached from the south, came within what sounded like 50 yards, and stopped. I did not turn on my light. I did not stand up. Per Rule 7, between midnight and 4 a.m., the forest is closed. It was not yet midnight, but the principle beneath the rule, the logic of it, told me to stay still. The steps did not resume. Whatever made them was standing in the dark below the bench, not moving. I could hear it not moving the way you can hear someone holding their breath in a quiet room. At midnight, I woke Aaron by touch. He sat up instantly, alert. I pointed toward the south trail and held up 1 finger. He nodded. We sat together in the dark, listening. Nothing. The footsteps didn't come back. At 12:34, One of the kids coughed in the boys' shelter. Aaron and I both flinched. Normal sound. Just a cough. At 1:17 a.m., I looked toward the girls' shelter and counted the sleeping bags visible through the mesh window. 3. There should have been 3. Haley, Sonia, and Kira. I counted 3. Good. Then I counted the boys' shelter. 3. My stomach dropped. There should have been 2, Marcus and David. 2 boys. I was looking at 3 sleeping bags. I touched Aaron's arm and pointed. He looked, counted, looked back at me with an expression I could read even in the dark. "That's 6, he whispered. "Total. That's 6. We sat with that for a long time. Neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. The rules said, do not attempt to determine. The rules said, count, observe, maintain. The rules said, do not exit the shelter. I counted the girls' shelter again. Still 3. Boys' shelter. Still 3. 6 children in a program that registered 4, that I'd confirmed 4 at check-in, that had become 5 during daylight and was now, in the space between midnight and dawn, 6. At 2:48 a.m., I heard the footsteps again. This time from the north. They circled the campsite at a distance of about 30 yards, moving slowly counterclockwise. I tracked them by sound. They completed 3 full circuits over the span of maybe 20 minutes, and then stopped somewhere east of us, behind the boys' shelter. I heard nothing after that. I did not sleep. Aaron did not sleep. We sat shoulder to shoulder until the sky began to gray at 5:12 a.m. At first light, I counted. Girls' shelter, 2. Haley and Sonia. Boys' shelter, 2. Marcus and David. 4 children. Correct manifest. No Kira. Aaron and I looked at each other. I still remember her, he said. So do I. The kids. I walked to the girls' shelter as they were waking up. Hey, how'd everyone sleep? Where's Kira? Haley looked at me with genuine confusion. Who's Kira? Sonia was already brushing her teeth. She didn't even look up. Never mind, I said, just double-checking my roster. 4 kids, no memory of a 5th among any of them. The name Kira Wayland appeared nowhere not in Aaron's notebook. I checked the page, now listed 4 names at the evening count. Not in any journal, not in any gear. The sleeping bag that had been in the 3rd slot of the girls' shelter was gone. Not removed, there was no gap, no empty space, just 2 bags, as if that's all there had ever been. I radioed dispatch at 6 a.m. Raul to dispatch. Site 11 Charlie. Dawn count is 4. Discrepancy has resolved. Overnight count showed 6 at approximately 01:17. Now 4. Requesting guidance. Trujillo responded personally again. Copy, Raul. Support team is 2 hours out. Maintain position. Do not discuss overnight observations with minors. You and Marsh write everything down now, while you remember it clearly. He said that last part, while you remember it clearly, with a weight that told me he knew something about what happens to these memories. So I wrote. Everything. Every detail I could hold on to, scratched into my notebook in the gray early light while the kids heated oatmeal and talked about nothing. The support team arrived at 8:30. 2 rangers, Bill Osterman, 20-year veteran, and Maria Salcedo from the supervisor's office. They brought a satellite phone and a sealed envelope addressed to me by name. Inside the envelope was a single sheet, typed. It read, Ranger Raul. You are now an observer of record for a Class 4 count discrepancy event. This designation carries specific responsibilities. You will be provided updated protocols within 7 days. Until then, do not discuss the event with non-designated personnel. Do not attempt to research historical events. Do not return to Site 11-C after dark until you have received additional training. Your log entries from this event are to be submitted in original form. Do not revise or edit. The count will return. When it does, you will know what to do because you did not do it this time. It was signed by the district supervisor and countersigned by someone from the state office whose name I didn't recognize. Bill and Maria evacuated the kids early, a day before their scheduled pickup. The parents were told it was due to weather. Aaron was reassigned to a different district. I never worked with him again, though we exchanged one email 3 weeks later in which he said only, "I still remember her face. Do you?" I did. For the rest of that summer, I patrolled my section normally. I did not return to 11C after dark. I received the updated protocols, a 3-page document that essentially expanded the 9 rules into more specific instructions for what to do if the count changed during daylight versus darkness, if the extras demonstrated awareness of being counted, if the extras attempted to leave with the group at the end of a rotation. That last one haunted me. The implication was clear. This had happened before. The extras had attempted to leave. The rules about counting obsessively at every transition, without discussing the discrepancy with minors, existed because at some point, someone hadn't counted. Someone had assumed 5 was correct when 4 was the number, and something had walked out of the forest wearing the face of a child that didn't exist, and had gone somewhere, into a car, into a town, into a house. I thought about that for a long time. The following summer, 2022, I was back in my section when the first group of the season came through. 8 kids this time, 2 counselors. I met them at Copper Creek Junction on a Tuesday. Counted 8. Confirmed 8 against manifest. Watched them head up the trail. Thursday at 2 p.m., Counselor Rivera radioed dispatch. "Dispatch, Stillwater Group 2. I have a count discrepancy." My heart rate didn't even change. It was like a seasonal event, like the first thunderstorm or the first frost. Expected. I packed my kit and started walking. By the time I arrived, the group had 9 kids. 1 extra boy named Theo. Kind face, easy laugh, knew everyone's name, had gear, had history, had memories the other kids confirmed. But this time, I had training. I had protocols. "Theo," I said during the evening journaling session. I sat next to him casually, as if making rounds. "What's your favorite thing about the trip so far?" He looked at me with brown eyes that reflected the firelight in a way I'd describe as warm. "The stars last night," he said. "I've never seen the Milky Way like that." "Yeah. You know what constellation was overhead around midnight?" He thought about it, smiled. I was asleep by then. Everyone was asleep by then, that's the point. Whatever Theo was, he knew the rules, too. That night, I counted. 9 at bedding. At 1 a.m., I counted through the mesh. 11, 2 extra sleeping bags in the boys' shelter, bodies in them, breathing. I wrote it down. I did not act. I did not separate. I did not identify. At dawn, 8 kids. Theo gone. No one remembered him. My notebook still had his name, and I'd learned to write in pen immediately, before the adjustment could reach my records. And here's what I need to tell you, the part that's kept me in this job, even though every June brings another count and another night of watching the numbers climb. I don't think they're dangerous. I've had 7 events now across 4 summers. The pattern is always the same. They appear during the day, integrate completely, are indistinguishable from real children, increase in number at night, and vanish at dawn. No child has ever been harmed. No extra has ever behaved aggressively or strangely. They are, by every measure I can observe, children, or something that is being a child so convincingly that the distinction might not matter. But the rules don't account for what I saw last September. End of season. No youth groups left. I was closing up sites for the winter, pulling bear boxes, locking shelters. I reached 11C on a Tuesday afternoon. Empty. Cold. The first snow was already dusting the peaks above. In the fire ring I found a journal. Green cover, standard Stillwater issue. Name written on the front in neat handwriting. Kira Wayland. I opened it. The entries were dated from the previous summer June, the week of the event. 5 days of observations, nature sketches, pressed wildflowers. Normal content. Except the last entry, dated the morning she disappeared, the morning the Count corrected. I don't want to go back. The forest is warmer than where I came from. The other kids are nice. The counselors care. Last night I could feel it trying to pull me out, trying to make the number right again. I don't know what I am, but I know what I want to be. I want to stay. I'm going to try to stay. If you find this, if you're the ranger who was watching, I'm sorry I scared you. I wasn't trying to. I was just trying to be one of them for a little longer. Please don't stop counting. The count is what makes it real. As long as someone counts us, we exist. I sat on the shelter platform with that journal for a long time. The wind was picking up, snow coming, the kind of afternoon where the whole forest sounds like it's inhaling before a long silence. I thought about Rule 5. Count all members. Report any discrepancy, even if the count corrects itself. I thought about what Trujillo told me: the count will return, and you'll know what to do because you didn't do it this time. I thought about Kira's face, brown eyes, dark hair, 14 years old, or something, wearing 14 so perfectly that it dreamed of being allowed to continue. And I thought about what the rules actually are. Not protections, not barriers. The rules are the architecture of the space where these things can exist temporarily. The count creates them. The counting makes them real. Someone, 19 years ago, discovered that children appearing and disappearing in the forest at night are stabilized by the act of enumeration, that if you count them, they cohere, they take shape, they persist through daylight, and if you stop counting, they dissolve. The rules aren't keeping something out. They're keeping something in, keeping it shaped. The rules are the walls of a house that something wants to live in, and every summer when I count them, I'm maintaining that house. I don't know what they are. I don't know where they come from at night when the numbers grow, whether the increase means more are arriving from somewhere, or whether the ones already present are multiplying, becoming more of themselves. I don't know where they go at dawn, or whether going is the right word for what happens when the count subtracts them. But I know this. Last September, when I drove down from 11C with Kira's journal in my pack, I stopped in Drummond for gas. Standing at the pump across from me was a girl. Dark hair, average height, maybe 17, 18. She was filling a sedan with out-of-state plates Oregon, and she looked over at me with brown eyes that reflected the fluorescent station light in a way I would describe as warm. She smiled, not at me exactly, at the fact that I was looking, at the fact that I was counting. Then she got in her car and drove west toward Missoula, and I stood there with the gas nozzle in my hand, unable to move, because I realized I'd been wrong about the rules. The rules aren't about the forest. The forest is just where the door is thin enough to count through. The rules exist because counting is what lets them stay. And somewhere, years ago, someone didn't count. Someone broke the circuit, and one of them hardened into permanence, walked out, grew up, got a car, got a life. I don't know how many. The program's been running 19 years, 7 events that I personally witnessed. But other rangers, Bill Osterman, others before him, they've seen more. Decades of counts, decades of extras appearing and dissolving. Except the dissolving only happens if you're watching, if you count them out at dawn, if you maintain the structure. What happens on the nights no one's counting? What happened in the early years before the rules existed? How many Kiras drove away? I'm still a ranger. I'll be back in June. The first group is already registered, 6 kids, 2 counselors, Site 11C. I'll meet them at Copper Creek Junction. I'll count them. I'll count them again at the site. I'll count them at bedding and in the dead hours and at first light. And when the number changes, because it will, I'll have to decide what the rules are actually asking me to do. Whether my job is to maintain the count that holds them in shape, giving them their temporary week of existence before the dawn takes them back. Or whether my job is to understand that Kira tried to stay and the count is what prevented her. That every time I enumerate them at first light, I'm not protecting the children from the forest. I'm protecting the forest's rules from the children it's trying to become. Rule 5 says, count all members, report any discrepancy, even if the count corrects itself. But what if, one morning, I just don't count? What if I let the number be whatever it is, and I don't look, and I let them keep the shape they held through the night? What walks out of the forest then? I think about this every night in my cabin, alone with the radio and the dark. The kids will be here in 9 days, and I still don't know which answer makes me the monster, the one who counts, or the one who finally stops. I keep Kira's journal in my desk drawer. I read the last entry often. Please don't stop counting. The count is what makes it real. She wanted to stay. She's asking me to count. But the girl at the gas station, the one who got out, who aged, who drives a car, she never asked anyone. She just left on a night when no one was watching the numbers. And she's out there now, being a person, being real without permission. And I wonder, in the worst hours before dawn, whether being real without permission is something I have any right to prevent. Whether these rules, these counts, these protocols exist to protect the world from something inhuman or to prevent something from becoming human without authorization. 9 days, 6 registered kids, 2 counselors. I'll be at the junction. I'll have my clipboard, I'll have my pen, and I'll count. I'll count because that's what I was told to do, and because the rules are not subject to discretion, and because the last sentence of the protocol says, violations result in immediate program suspension and mandatory incident review. But also because somewhere in my memory there's a 14-year-old girl named Kira who existed for 31 hours and wrote in her journal that she wanted to stay, and counting was the only thing that ever made her real at all. Even temporarily, even for a week. I count them because it's the only kindness available. A week of being a child, a week of having a name and a sleeping bag and someone who says good night, and at dawn, I count them back out because those are the rules. Those are the rules. But rules, I've learned, have a memory of their own. They remember the situations that created them. And this June 9 days from now, becoming 8, becoming 7, I'm carrying a piece of information that the rules never accounted for. Something I found in February that changed the architecture of everything I thought I understood. Winter in the Garnet Range is administrative. I work from the district office in Drummond, processing trail permits, updating maps, coordinating with the Forest Service on prescribed burn plans. Quiet work. The kind of work where your hands are busy and your mind wanders back into the trees whether you want it to or not. In February, I was digitizing old incident logs, part of a records modernization project the state mandated in 2023. Scanning handwritten forms from the 80s and 90s into the database. Tedious, but simple. I'd been at it 3 days when I hit a box labeled GR-DIST/youthprog/pre-protocol, dated 1997 through 2006. Before the rules existed, before anyone had written them down. The first few files were standard campsite reservations, group manifests, counselor evaluations. Then I found a folder with a red tab. Inside were 11 incident reports, all filed by the same ranger, Thomas Cavanaugh, who held my position from 1993 to 2009. His handwriting was small and precise, the penmanship of someone who believed documentation was a form of self-defense. The first report was dated August 14, 2003. Site 11-C. Group of 7 registered campers, ages 13 to 15. Evening count, 7. Morning count, 7. However, Counselor Daniels reported that during the night, she observed approximately 12 to 14 children sleeping in the shelters. She attributed this to a dream. I am noting it because this is the fourth such report this summer from the same site. The second, September 2nd, 2003, end of season site closure. Found personal items in Shelter 2 that do not correspond to any registered group. 1 sleeping bag, blue, child-sized. 1 pair of hiking boots, women's size 5. 1 journal, empty, no name. Items collected and stored in district evidence locker. Then a gap until June 2004, when the reports became more frequent and more specific. Kavanaugh was counting. He'd started doing it deliberately, showing up at sites during active youth rotations, performing independent head counts without informing counselors. His numbers didn't match the manifests. They were always higher. June 19th, 2004. Site 11-C. Manifest 10. My count at 1430. 10. My count at 1900. 12. My count at 0615 the following morning. 10. Counselor did not report discrepancy. Counselor appeared unaware of overnight increase. July 7th, 2004. Site 8-B. Manifest 6. My count at arrival. 6. My count at 2200. 8. My count at dawn. 6. I spoke with one of the extras at 1600, a boy approximately 14, calling himself Patrick. He knew the other children's names. They knew his. He had program gear. He participated in the afternoon session. He was gone at morning count. No one remembered him. My notebook retains the name. This continued through 2004 and 2005. Kavanaugh documented 17 separate events across 3 summers. His methodology became increasingly rigorous, photographing groups, marking specific details about extras, clothing, eye color, distinguishing marks, noting exact times of appearance and disappearance. Then I found the report that changed everything. November the 12th, 2005. Off-season. Handwritten on plain paper rather than the standard form, as if he'd written it at home rather than the office. I have been conducting follow-up research on the extras. Specifically, I have been attempting to trace Patrick from the July 2004 event at 8B. I described him to the counselor from that rotation during a casual conversation. She had no memory. I described him to the children's parents at a program reunion event, no recognition. But one parent, a Mrs. Aldridge from Great Falls, became visibly disturbed. She asked me where I'd heard that name. I told her I was checking records. She said her son used to have an imaginary friend named Patrick during the summer of 2004. An imaginary friend who, according to her son, lived in the forest and was only real when people were watching. I pressed her. She said her son stopped talking about Patrick after that summer. Said he grew out of it, but she remembered because her son had been upset, had cried about Patrick not being allowed to come home with them. I believe the children know. Not consciously, not in a way they retain, but in the moment, during the event, they understand what the extras are, and the extras understand what they are. The relationship is not parasitic. It is not predatory. It is aspirational. The extras want to be children. The real children, on some level, want to help them. After that, Kavanaugh's reports shifted from documentation to experimentation, and this is where my hand started shaking as I scanned the pages. March 2006. I have obtained approval from Supervisor Hendricks for a modified observation protocol during the upcoming summer season. The modification is as follows. During one controlled event, I will not perform the dawn count. I will allow the overnight number to persist into morning. I want to see what happens when the count does not force a correction. June 22nd, 2006, Site 11-C. Manifest 8. Thursday. PM count 10. 2 extras, a girl, Margot, and a boy, Ellis. I confirmed integration was complete by evening. All 10 children interacted normally. Counselor unaware. Per protocol modification, I did not count at dawn. I did not look at the shelters. I stayed in my cabin until 0800 and then approached the site without performing enumeration. Result: 10 children at breakfast. Both extras present. Counselor still unaware. Day proceeded normally. I maintained non-counting posture throughout Friday. Friday PM, still 10. Friday overnight, I counted through the mesh. 14. 4 new extras in addition to Margot and Ellis. Saturday. AM, I did not count. Still 10 at breakfast. The original 2 extras had stabilized. The 4 new overnight additions had not, or the 4 new ones had dissolved back into whatever they were, while Margot and Ellis persisted because I had failed to enumerate them out at the previous dawn. Saturday. PM, still 10. Saturday overnight count, 16. Something is compounding. Sunday, June 25th, 2006. The last entry in Kavanaugh's experiment. I resumed counting at Sunday dawn. I stood at each shelter and counted deliberately, verbally, pointing at each sleeping bag. The number was 8. Manifest correct. Margot and Ellis were gone. The 4 Saturday additions were gone. Everyone who had appeared during the window of my non-counting had been subtracted back. But one of the original 8 children, a boy named Cody Whitmore, looked at me while I was counting and said, "You're doing it again." I asked him what he meant. He said, "Sending them away." Then he went back to eating his oatmeal and did not remember the conversation 10 minutes later. I am discontinuing the experiment. The children are aware at a level I cannot control, and the compounding effect of non-counting suggests that whatever enters during the night is, I believe, trying to establish a foothold through sheer numerical pressure. The dawn count isn't just maintaining a boundary. It's actively subtracting entities that have achieved partial integration. Without it, they accumulate, and accumulation, I suspect, eventually reaches a threshold where subtraction is no longer possible. The last page in Kavanaugh's folder was not an incident report. It was a memo to Supervisor Hendricks, dated August 2006. Request: formal establishment of nighttime operational rules for all Garnet Range Youth Program activities. Justification attached. These rules must be presented as non-negotiable and non-contextual. Ranger discretion must be explicitly excluded. The count must be mandatory, automatic, and performed at every transition between darkness and light. Without these rules, we risk a compounding event that produces permanent extras entities that have crossed the dawn threshold so many times without subtraction that they achieve irreversible integration. See also, gas station incident, Missoula, July 2006. Female, approximately 18, matching description of Margot from June 22nd event, 4 years of apparent aging in 4 weeks. Purchased fuel and continued west on ENI 90. I was unable to follow. License plate traced to a vehicle registered to a Margot Ellis at an address in Boise that, upon investigation, did not exist before June 2006. She combined their names. She built a life out of the space I gave her by not counting. This cannot happen again. I sat in the district office with that memo in my hands for a very long time. The radiator ticked. Outside, February snow was falling in that silent Montana way where the flakes are so dry they don't make a sound when they land. Kavanaugh created them. Not the extras themselves, they were already appearing, already trying, but he created the conditions for one to escape. His 3 days of non-counting gave Margot enough stability to survive the dawn, and then she just left. Walked down the trail, walked into town, built documents and history and a registered vehicle from nothing, or from whatever substance they're made of when no one is forcing them back into the night with a number. And then he wrote the rules to make sure it never happened again. Rules designed not to understand the phenomenon, but to mechanically prevent the specific failure mode he'd produced, an extra achieving enough consecutive persistence to harden into permanence. Rule 5. Count all members, Report any discrepancy, even if the count corrects itself. Even if the count corrects itself. Because if you stop counting because the number looks right, you might be looking at a stabilized extra and not knowing it. The correction has to be forced, observed, performed. I finished scanning the files. I sealed the originals back in the box. I did not report what I'd found to Trujillo because the memo said not to research historical events, and I'd done exactly that. And because I now understood that the rules I'd been following for 4 years were not an institutional protection system. They were one man's guilt architecture. Kavanaugh built them to cage the door he'd accidentally opened, and every ranger since has been performing his penance without knowing it. And now, here I am. 8 days, 6 kids, Site 11-C. I know what's coming. I know the number will change. I know that between the hours of midnight and 4 a.m., the shelters will hold more bodies than I registered at the junction. I know that something multiple somethings will try again to be children for a week, and that my dawn count will subtract them back into wherever they go when they're not being observed. But this year, I also know about Kira's journal. I know she tried to stay. I know that what she needed was for me to simply not look at the shelters at first light. To give her one more dawn without enumeration. And I know that somewhere in Idaho, a woman named Margot Ellis has been living a life for 20 years because Thomas Kavanaugh gave her exactly that. Is Margot Ellis a person? She has a driver's license. She buys fuel. She presumably pays rent, eats food, sleeps at night. Is she a person who was never born, or is she something else wearing personhood like a coat? And does the distinction matter, morally, when she's spent 2 decades being indistinguishable from any other woman on the interstate? I don't know. The rules say it's not my decision. The rules say count. The rules say discretion is not available. The rules say Kavanaugh's experiment proved that non-counting produces compounding, and compounding produces permanence, and permanence is what? A breach? An invasion? Or just an uncontrolled immigration from somewhere that isn't here into somewhere that is? I keep coming back to Cody Whitmore, 14 years old, looking at Kavanaugh and saying, "You're sending them away. The children know." In the moment, during the event, the real children understand that their temporary companions are being subtracted by the act of counting, and at least one of them perceived that as something being done to the extras. Something cruel. 8 days. I've prepared my kit. I've charged my radio. I've confirmed the shelter locks and the bear canisters. I've laminated a new copy of the rules and posted it at 11C. And I've made a decision, though I'm not sure yet whether it's a decision or a surrender. I'm going to count. At every transition, at every threshold. I'm going to do my job because the rules exist for a reason, and because Kavanaugh's experiment showed that non-counting compounds, and compounding might eventually produce something. I can't subtract something that doesn't just want to be a child for a week, but wants to replace one. But I'm also going to do something Kavanaugh never did. Something the rules don't prohibit because it never occurred to anyone that a ranger would try. I'm going to talk to them, the extras. During the day, while they're integrated, while they're being children, I'm going to sit with them around the fire ring and ask them what they remember. Not to identify them, not to separate them from the group. Just to know them, to give them the experience of being known by name for the hours they exist. Because Kira's journal said, as long as someone counts us, we exist. And I think she was right. But I think there's something between counting them in and counting them out. There's the space of the day, the warm hours. The hours when they have names and faces and someone says goodnight. I can give them that. The rules allow it. The rules say do not attempt to determine which is unmanifested. The rules say treat all as legitimate participants. So I will. Legitimately. With full attention. With the kind of care you give to anything that only gets 1 week, and at dawn I'll count them back out. Because I have to. Because compounding is dangerous. Because Kavanaugh showed what happens when you don't. But I'll remember their names. I'll write them in pen. And when the adjustment takes them from everyone else's memory, I'll still have them in my notebook, in my handwriting, proof that they existed for 7 days and were seen. It's not enough. I know that. It's the smallest possible kindness inside a system designed to be unkind, but it's what the rules leave room for, and it's all I have. 6 days now. The manifest arrived this morning. 6 names, 12 through 15. 2 counselors, 1 new, 1 returning. Site 11-C. I wonder how many will be 7 by Thursday. How many by Friday. Whether I'll recognize any faces from last year, or whether each summer brings new ones, new attempts, new children pressing against the membrane of the count, trying to stay. I wonder if any of them will leave a journal. I wonder if I'll ever stop wanting to let one stay. The radio sits on my desk, silent. Outside, the snow is melting. The creeks are running. The forest is waking up the way it does every June, slowly, and then all at once, and full of things that weren't there in winter. Or maybe they were. Maybe they're always there. Maybe the count is just the frequency at which they become visible, and without children present, without the aspiration, the template, the warmth of a group to integrate into, they have nothing to cohere around. The kids arrive Tuesday. I'll meet them at the junction. I'll count 6, and then I'll wait for the number to become 7, and I'll say hello to whoever arrives. And I'll give them their week, and on the last morning in the grey dawn light, I'll stand outside the shelters with my clipboard, and I'll count, and the number will be correct, and someone will be gone who was there the night before, and I'll write their name in my notebook, in pen, and I'll close it, and I'll walk back to my cabin alone. That's the job. That's what the rules ask of me, and it's not enough, and it's not nothing, and it's the only thing I know how to do. The forest gets dark early this time of year, early enough that you can feel it coming, the transition from counted to uncounted, from numbered to innumerable. I turn on my porch light at 8. I lock my door at 9. I listen to the radio until I sleep. And sometimes, in the hours between midnight and 4, I hear footsteps on the trail outside my cabin. Small ones, child weight, moving slowly, as if exploring, as if looking for someone who's still awake, as if hoping that being heard is almost as good as being counted. I don't open the door. Rule 7, the forest is closed, but I stay awake, and I listen. And in my notebook I write, 1. Passing south to north, approximately 1:30. Duration of audibility, 40 seconds. It's not a count. It's not enumeration. It doesn't subtract anything or force anything back. It's just a record that someone was here, that someone walked past in the dark and was noticed. It's the least I can do. It's everything I can do. Until last Tuesday, when I realized it might not be enough anymore. When I realized the system might be changing in ways Kavanaugh's rules never anticipated. I was in the district office, finalizing the summer trail opening schedule, when Maria Salcedo knocked on my door frame. She had that look, the one people get when they've been carrying something for a while and have finally decided to set it down in front of you. You have a minute? I did. She sat across from me with a manila folder and a cup of coffee she didn't drink. I pulled the registration data for this summer's youth groups, she said. All 8 rotations, June through August, standard manifest review. Okay. Every group is full, wait-listed actually, programs popular. Colleen expanded capacity last year. I know. What's the issue? Maria opened the folder. Inside was a printed spreadsheet, the master registration for all summer rotations. Names, ages, emergency contacts, medical information, the standard intake form data. Group 3, she said. July rotation, Site 11-C, 8 registered campers. I looked at the list. 8 names. Standard. One of them is Kira Wayland. The room didn't change. The radiator kept ticking. The fluorescent light kept humming its flat 60 hertz hum. But something in my chest went cold and very still. She registered through the normal system, Maria continued. Online form, parental consent, medical disclosure, the works, payment cleared. Emergency contact listed as a woman named Judith Wayland in Boise. Boise. I ran the contact number, Maria said. It's valid. I called it. A woman answered. Said her daughter Kira was excited about the program. Said she'd done similar camps before. Said Kira was 14. I looked at the registration date. March 3rd, 2026. 4 months ago. Something had filled out a form, provided a credit card, listed an emergency contact with a Boise phone number, and enrolled in the Stillwater Youth Conservation Camp using the name of a girl who had existed for 31 hours in 2021 and left a journal in a fire ring asking to stay. Maria, the address in Boise. I checked. It's real. Residential, single-family home. Listed owner is Judith Wayland. Property records go back to 2008. 2 years after Kavanaugh's experiment. 2 years after a woman named Margot Ellis appeared in a vehicle registered to a Boise address that did not exist before June 2006. How long have you known about this? I asked. I found it during spring review, 3 weeks ago. I took it to Trujillo. And he told me to inform you directly. Said you were the observer of record and this fell under your designation. She paused. He also said he'd never seen one register before. Neither had I. In everything Kavanaugh documented, in everything I'd witnessed across 4 summers, the extras appeared spontaneously during active groups. They materialized within the ecosystem of an existing camp session. They didn't plan ahead. They didn't fill out forms. They didn't have parents who answered phones. Unless they did. Now. Unless 20 years of someone like Margot living in Boise, building a life, growing into a woman, had produced something the rules never modeled, an extra who wasn't trying to become a child temporarily, wasn't pressing against the membrane of the count for 1 week of being real, an extra who had been raised, who had a mother, who was, by every bureaucratic and biological measure, a 14-year-old girl with a name and a home and a registration receipt. A second generation. I sat with that thought for the rest of the afternoon. The implications unfolded slowly, each one worse than the last. If Margot Ellis escaped extra, Kavanaugh's guilt, the one who walked out because no one counted her back, had established a permanent life in Boise, then she'd had 18 years of being a person. 18 years of documents accumulating, relationships forming, reality thickening around her until she wasn't an extra at all anymore. She was just a woman. And if that woman had a daughter biologically, or through whatever process of generation these things use, then Kira wasn't an extra trying to become a child. Kira was a child trying to become an extra. Oh no, that's not right either. Kira was an extra in 2021. I saw her. She integrated for 31 hours, was counted out at dawn, dissolved from everyone's memory but mine. She left a journal. She wanted to stay, but now she's registered. Now she has a mother. Now she's coming back in July through the front door with paperwork as a legitimate participant, not sneaking in through the night count, not appearing between one enumeration and the next, walking up to Copper Creek Junction with a backpack and a consent form, and I will have to check her name against the manifest and say, confirmed. And when I count at bedding, she'll be on the list. She'll be on the list because she registered. And at dawn, when I count, she'll still be there because the count only subtracts unmanifested individuals. Extras, the ones who aren't on the paper. Kira will be on the paper. The rules don't account for this. The rules assume the extras arrive uninvited, unregistered, undocumented. The dawn count works because it measures the gap between the manifest and the reality, and the gap is where the extras live. Close the gap at dawn, and they disappear. But if there's no gap, if the number matches the manifest because the extra is on the manifest, then the count does nothing. The mechanism fails. Not because it's been broken from outside, but because something learned the rules well enough to satisfy them from within. I called Trujillo that evening. He picked up on the second ring, which told me he'd been expecting my call. "You saw the registration," he said. "I saw it. Cal, what do we do?" "What do the rules say?" "The rules say count against the manifest. If Kira Wayland is on the manifest, the count won't flag her. She'll persist through dawn because there's no discrepancy to correct." "That's right. So what do we do?" Silence for a long time. Then, "Donna, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. When you met the Kira extra in 2021, the 31-hour event, did she seem dangerous to you?" "No." "Did she seem harmful to the other children?" "No. They liked her. They included her. They remembered her as a friend until the count erased her." "And the journal she left? The one asking to stay? Did that read to you like a predator's strategy? Or like a child's plea? A child's plea, unambiguously." "Then here's what we do. We let her come. We treat her as a registered participant. We count her in, and we watch carefully, without interference, to see what happens when something that used to dissolve at dawn is allowed to persist through the full week without subtraction. And if she compounds? If her presence attracts others, the way Kavanaugh saw? Then we count the others out at dawn, as always. But Kira manifested Kira, documented Kira. Kira with a mother in Boise stays, because the rules say she stays." "The rules weren't designed for this, Cal." "No, they weren't. But neither were they designed to be weapons against something that found a legal way through. If she's on the paper, she's on the paper. We don't get to subtract a registered child because of what we think she might be." He was right, and I hated that he was right, because it meant the rules had been outgrown by the very phenomenon they were built to contain. Kavanaugh's architecture, the careful enumeration, the forced dawn correction worked only as long as the extras remained undocumented. Margot's escape in 2006 hadn't just produced one permanent individual. It had produced a lineage, a pathway, a method by which the things in the forest could stop pressing against the count and simply go around it, register, document, arrive through the front door, be counted in from the beginning, and the dawn subtraction, which only targets the gap between manifest and reality, passes right over you like a wave over a stone that was there before the water rose. I drove to Boise last weekend. I'm not proud of it. The memo in my designation file says, "Do not research historical events," but this isn't historical anymore. This is operational. This is a 14-year-old girl who will be in my care in 6 weeks, and I need to know what I'm caring for. The address Maria gave me was in a quiet neighborhood south of the river. Mature trees, well-kept yards. The house was a modest craftsman, painted sage green with white trim. There was a bicycle in the driveway and a garden hose coiled by the front steps. Ordinary, in every particular. I parked across the street. I didn't get out. I sat in my truck for 40 minutes, watching the house the way I watch a shelter at night, counting the details, looking for the discrepancy. There wasn't one. It was just a house. A woman came out at one point to check the mailbox, mid-40s, dark hair, unremarkable. She glanced at my truck without concern and went back inside. Judith Wayland, or Margot Ellis, or whatever name applies to something that was counted into existence in 2004 and walked out of the forest 2 years later into a life that has now produced a daughter. I drove home. 5 hours of highway through mountain passes still holding spring snow. I thought the entire way about what Kavanaugh wrote. She combined their names and about the implications of a thing that can build not just a self, but a family. That can generate not just documents, but relationships. That can fill out a camp registration form for its offspring and list itself as emergency contact and answer the phone when a district analyst calls to verify. That's not an extra pressing against the membrane. That's something that passed through the membrane 20 years ago and has been quietly building on the other side ever since. And now, its daughter is coming back. Coming back to 11C where it started. Coming back to the shelters where something first gave her a name and a sleeping bag for 31 hours before the dawn count sent her away. Except this time, she has paperwork. This time the count can't touch her. What does she want? To be a camper for a week? To prove she can survive the dawn? Or something else? Something I can't model because the rules never imagined a scenario where the extras learn the rules well enough to make themselves permanent from the start. I think about compounding. Kavanaugh's non-counting experiment produced 4 additional extras on the second night, 6 more on the third. The extras attract more extras. Presence generates presence, and Kira, registered, documented, immune to the dawn count, will be there for 7 full days and 6 full nights. A permanent presence inside the system. A stable nucleus around which overnight extras could accumulate without being subtracted, because the manifest says the number is correct. Unless I change the manifest. Unless I find a reason, a bureaucratic reason, a medical hold, a behavioral flag, to deny her registration before July. I could do that. I have the authority. A note to Colleen about a concern, a flag in the system, an apologetic call to the Boise number. Sorry, ma'am, we're oversubscribed this rotation. Your daughter is welcome to reapply next summer. Except that's exactly the kind of discretion Rule 9 forbids. And more than that, it would mean using my knowledge of what Kira is, or what I believe she is, to deny her something she's entitled to by every rule the system has. She registered. She paid. She has a parent's consent. She's 14 years old, and I would be excluding her from a youth program because of something I saw 5 years ago that no one else remembers. That's not ranger discretion. That's something uglier. So I'll be at Copper Creek Junction in July. And I'll count 7 kids out of the van, and one of them will be Kira Wayland, and she'll be wearing a green Stillwater t-shirt and carrying a journal and looking at me with brown eyes that reflect the light in a way I'd describe as warm, and I'll check her name against the manifest and say, confirmed. And I'll watch. Through the warm hours when they're all just children, and through the dark hours when the count rises and falls like breathing, and through the dawns when my enumeration sends the unlisted ones back. I'll watch to see if Kira draws more, if her documented persistence creates a gravitational well that pulls extras in faster, holds them longer, gives them enough stability to survive my morning count, the way she survived it not by hiding from the number, but by being on the right side of it. And if that happens, if I stand at the shelter on the third morning and count 12 where the manifest says 8, and all 12 have names and histories and faces the other kids recognize, then I'll know that the rules have failed, that the architecture Kavanaugh built to contain his mistake has been learned and solved and circumvented by the very things it was designed to subtract. And I'll have to decide what to do without discretion, without rules, without any framework at all except the question I've been asking myself for 4 years. Are they children? Or are they something being children? And does it matter, morally, if the answer is both? 6 weeks. The snow is almost gone from the lower elevations. The trail crews are out repairing winter damage. I can smell the forest waking up that first warm resin scent that means the sap is running, that the trees are breathing again, that summer is coming whether I'm ready or not. I keep Kira's journal in my desk drawer. I read the last entry most nights before I sleep. Please don't stop counting. The count is what makes it real. She asked me to count. She's coming back in July to be counted. And this time, the count won't send her away. I should be relieved. I should be glad that something I felt guilty about the annual subtraction, the dawn erasure, the mechanical unkindness of the rules, is being bypassed by something that found a gentler way through. Registration instead of dissolution. Paperwork instead of pressing against the night. A mother in Boise instead of a journal in a fire ring. But I can't stop thinking about Kavanaugh's compounding data. 4 extra on the second night, 6 more on the third. the numbers growing in the dark like something breathing deeper. And I can't stop thinking about what a full week of uninterrupted presence might attract, might anchor, might make permanent in ways my dawn count can no longer prevent. The rules say count. The rules say do not use discretion. So I'll count. And I'll watch the numbers, and if the numbers grow beyond what I can subtract, I'll document it, in pen, in my notebook, the way I've documented everything as a record that someone was here. That something happened. That I was watching when the architecture finally failed. It's all I know how to do. It's going to have to be enough.